Folks, it is indeed a pleasure for me to welcome someone that I was trying to find quite some time ago because she had an influence on who I believe that I've become today. In our life, a number of people come across our paths and expose us to certain things, and sometimes these things have lasting effects, sometimes they don't. And so, this particular individual by the name of Gerthie Owtram was one of my high school teachers back in Form 3 in 1974-75, who had an impact, I would say, on my life, and not just me, but some of my other classmates as well.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. It's such a wonderful thing to hear something like that. And I'm glad that I was able to provide something that had an impact on your life.
Appreciate that. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, because you ended up in St. Lucia, which is how you ended up becoming our teacher by moving to St. Lucia. But you're originally from New York.
Yeah, I'm originally from New York. I grew up in Harlem, and Harlem has that musical thing to it, jazz and so on. But I went to the City College of New York, and then after that, I got my master's degree in journalism from Columbia University. And after that, I went immediately into a job at CBS, and I was an associate producer at CBS, and I enjoyed the work, but it was a difficult time in media because there were lots of people wanting to present certain groups of people in a certain way. And I thought that very often African American people were not treated fairly in media.
So, when you felt that, what did that make you decide to do? Did
Oh, I
you?
worked very hard at trying to be as productive as I could be in that environment. And I had been working really, weeks and working late, and I had some time off. So I decided I wanted to take a trip through the Caribbean, and I was supposed to go with a girlfriend of mine. And we were going to plan a trip from Trinidad up to St. Thomas. We were just going to island hop.
Right.
And then she backed out at the last minute, and I said, "Oh no, I'm going." And so
Right.
I went on my own, and I did go to Trinidad. I went to Grenada. I went to Barbados. And so I ended up going to St. Lucia, and I liked St. Lucia. I thought St. Lucia was a beautiful place.
What is it about that St. Lucia that sort of caught your attention?
Well, I like the vegetation and the sea and I and the people seem friendly and nice, so I didn't have any. I liked it. I felt quite good there. If I have to choose a place to live now, um, I can't think of any place that's better than the Caribbean, as long as you can live comfortably.
Yes.
But there are people who don't have any work and things like that, and that's a
Right.
big problem here. But if you
Absolutely.
have work and you know what you have a means, you can live very comfortably and very ecologically speaking. It's a good place to be. I wouldn't want to be in a snowstorm in New York right now.
Now, one of the things that I in just kind of one pondering every now and then, where's Gertie Owtram, and I didn't remember your first name, as a matter of fact. It was more your we call you Miss Owtram as our teacher, right? And so when finally when I managed to get in touch with Emerson Nurse, and I said, listen, man, I've been trying to find out whatever happened to Miss Owtram, and he said, oh, Gertie's let me ask Lufa, and then he asked Lufa, and then he got the number for me, and that's how I got in touch with you. Because I did sort of search the internet a little bit, and I found this one thing, which is I think there is a tree that is blossoming in pink or whatever behind you, but I believe that's a cover from one of your books, right? If I'm not
No,
mistaken.
no, it's a poem.
It's
It's part
one
of
of your
a
poems.
poem.
Right, okay.
It's actually a poem about the seasons.
Oh, fantastic. So I discovered. I was going to say that I discovered that you were a poet, because when I came across that on the internet, I realized, oh, she writes poetry, and this was quite interesting. So tell us a little bit about your foray into poetry, and if you would share with us one of your pieces.
Okay, well, poetry, it's something that I find is important for if you have something inside that you want to express and you find the words to be able to express it. And it's important that you do. And so I started poetry from that perspective. Although I was admitted into the Graduate School of Fine Arts at Columbia University. I made the decision to go to the journalism school
Okay.
because I thought, well, I probably have a better chance of getting a job in the journalism school rather than
The fine arts,
and
yeah,
I had that the possibility for poetry early on,
right.
but I chose journalism instead. But then afterwards, the poetry came up. It bubbled
Right.
up in my life. So
Okay.
that's what I have to say about the poetry that I also have on the back of my book here, which is called Weed. And it's not about smoking weed. It's about weeding out the things in your life that stop you from blossoming.
Right. The
Uh,
hindrances.
on the back of my book, I have my philosophy, which is that all profound human experiences eventually become poetry.
Interesting.
And so we can't go through life without having some profound human experiences. And those profound human experiences are the things which give life to my poetry.
Right.
I just want to tell you something about passion.
Yes, please.
Okay. So passions grow, or they do die, but they never, never lie. So that's why you haven't gone into poetry.
That is interesting because
So that's the end of a poem about passion. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but it's a
oh,
poem.
okay. But I know sometimes you have these very short poems that are just very
No,
profound.
it's a longer poem, but that's the end of it.
Okay, fantastic. But I was just going to say before you read the poem about beauty,
I don't have to
that
read that one, you know.
was that.
I don't have to read the one
No,
about
no,
beauty.
no. But I liked it. I mean, anyway.
Oh,
But
okay.
certainly you could read anything that you want, for sure.
Okay.
But I was just going.
I'm just going along with you, and whatever comes up.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a conversation, you know. Definitely. The reason why I was going to just say that that interestingly enough, when you talked about you could have gone into finance, but you went into journalism because you need to get a job. But I'm saying that I have a kind of a similar situation where after Form 6, and I wanted to go this. I wanted to this. I wanted to make. I was making my decision as to what I wanted to study. I wanted to study music. So in fact, I was quite prepared to do crazy things like I applied to the American Navy Band. I wanted to learn. I did.
Passionate.
That's also talking about the fashion. I wanted to learn music so badly, and there was just it was either you go into to the police band at home, but then the American Navy band had a jazz section to it somehow, and then so they would always advertise in Downbeat magazine. So I'm like, this would be an opportunity for me to get free schooling in music, and I'll just go that route, because I mean I really did not have a scholarship or funding, so I needed somebody that would take me in for free, and I figured the American Navy. The American Army band or Navy band would have taken me in for free. Of course, I never got a response. But my mother said to me, she said, "No, don't study music. Don't study music. You're going to starve. Become a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. You need to have a job, right?" So you figured that with music, I would just not have a job. So when you talked about the prospects of getting meaningful employment, I had to consider that myself. But
You
I
know,
never gave up music, and that's where the passion comes in that we're talking about.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually have something that maybe your viewers might be interested in. If they go to Gerthie's Place on YouTube,
Yes.
they will find an interview that I did with Clarence Atkins.
Right.
Clarence Atkins is a jazz historian. Well, was a jazz historian. He's passed away now,
Okay.
but he was there when bebop was first born.
Mm.
He was in Mitten's Playhouse when that happened,
Yeah.
and I interviewed him, and he talks. He gives us very good insight into people like Count Basie, Duke Ellington, and the Dorsey brothers,
Right.
and um, people. Benny Goodman being named the King of Swing, which was a misnomer.
Of course.
You know, right. So it's interesting. If anybody has the interest, they can
Yes.
go on Gerthie's Place
I
and look
would.
up Clarence Atkins.
Okay. We'll definitely share the link for sure.
Okay.
All right. So, read us one of your poems of your choice.
Uh, okay. So I guess I should. It's the new year. We're not out of January yet.
Yeah.
So why don't we start by celebrating this new year?
Okay.
Okay. Um, I'm going to put these on. Celebration. Won't you come celebrate with me? Run, laugh, and blow out candles. Kiss away another year. Loving, longing, embracing the new ones, the new things. Celebrate with me. My heart wants you to be whole, like the circular, circling, circling, holding together the manner of another year. The rush of my life's rhythm is what I celebrate, and I will do it with or without you.
Wow. Fantastic. And now this is in your book Weed, right? Correct?
Yes, this is in my book,
So
Weed.
where can listeners or watchers get a copy of your book?
Oh, they can get it on Amazon, or if they have it on, yeah, it's on Amazon.com, and it's also on, yeah, you can get it on Amazon.
I mentioned to you that you've had this impact because of two things that happened while you were teaching us. One was an opportunity to express myself in terms of how I was feeling at the time. Now, albeit that I was a little, a young kid, 14 years old, but Bob Marley's music was becoming very popular at the time, and I sort of recognized this sort of resistance in his music, the protest in his music, the challenge of the kind of hegemony that we had in society, classism and racism and all those things. And somehow it struck a chord with me because as I was becoming more aware, self-aware, and also aware of my environment, I did notice that, at St. Mary's College, let's face it, because it was the number one boys' school, so you would have a wide range of people at the school, middle class, upper class, low working class, people of all sorts of hues. Because I would, at the very least, I would say this: you had to pass an entrance exam to get to the school. So if you did well, it didn't matter if you were working class. If you had good marks, you get in. The school was run by Presentation Brothers at the time, and I'll say that whether not some people agree with me or not, but I did notice that there was a little bit of bias or preference for kids of a lighter hue. So there was this whole complexion thing, and again, if you think about it in a rational way, you could say, well, the very light skin, or even people who were descendants of former settlers, kind of look closer to them than they look than they look to us. So they kind of found some kind of affinity, because if you have a small group of Presentation Brothers who are there teaching at the school and trying to form relationships, somehow they see some affinity with people who were either St. Lucian whites or descendants of former settlers and so on. So I noticed that, and I think Bob Marley's music spoke to me, and in particular one song was Big Tree Small Axe. So when you ask us one day to bring in a song that meant something to us, I brought in Big Tree Small Axe. We played it, and then we had to explain why the song was important, what did it mean to us, and so forth. And I think I had an opportunity to at least share that aspect of why that song meant so much to me. That I saw myself as a small axe that had to cut down big trees. The big trees being the impediments to life, And so Weed is actually a book that is totally apropos, about weeding out the things. So I had to kind of develop this a coping mechanism, and Bob Marley's music was definitely one of the forms of music that provide inspiration and strength and so on. So I shared that with the class that time. So share another poem.
It's what you say is so important, because we realize today that looking back, we've made a lot of progress as a people. We look at ourselves in different ways, but we still all have to teach our children. We have to come to grips with certain ideas ourselves,
Right.
because of television, because of this, because of that. And I understand that some people of a darker hue might have had to overcome certain difficulties in terms of their self-image.
Right.
Okay, so this particular poem I wrote for my son. He wasn't even 1 year old yet, and I wrote this poem for him. It's called Beauty Beware. Which eye its own beauty beholds? Most are more like ears than eyes, believing not what they see, but what they're told. Beauty beware, lest they tell you you are not. In the fullness of lips, in the nostril round, in a kink, in a curl, in the spectral depths of brown. Beauty, take care. The trained eye, like a vice, narrows you into some angled space where brown eyes have no place. Were it that each man had the vision by his own insight to see, he could look for beauty where he has not and find it in me.
That is profound. Very, very, very profound. So how was your son, when obviously you say you wrote it for him, and as he got older, how has he reckoned with the words in the poem? Has he mentioned anything to you about it, or does he carry it with
He
him?
likes my poetry. He likes my poetry, but see, I'm not a person who asks anybody to close off anything. Here's his family.
Okay.
Do you see it?
Oh yes, I see him, and he's in Canada, right?
Yes. And his wife is Canadian.
Yes,
And I have two little grandchildren there. They're
I
both
could
wonderful children.
I could see that.
And
Yeah,
that's our family.
fantastic.
So you can see it's a kind of a multiracial family.
Right.
And I've been married to the same man for 49 years. And you just have to be open. I think it's a mistake for any group of people to feel absolutely confined to a certain set of circumstances that makes them reject other people.
Right. Right.
I don't, people should do whatever they want. We have to be culturally, it's easier to be with another person of the same culture, but there's also an expansion of being with people or traveling or seeing people, whatever. I think we have to open ourselves up.
Right, and I think we had a conversation some time ago about the idea that if we embrace Martin Luther King's principle about it's about the not the color of your skin but the content of your character, then most certainly we could actually bring humanity to a place where we could all sort of share the planet together and enjoy it
But
together.
we'll
You
have
know?
to, eventually, we'll have to.
Yes,
We'll
absolutely.
have
No,
to or perish.
exactly, exactly. No, I totally agree with you on that.
But I
So,
have a poem. Yes, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, please. You go
No,
ahead.
I have a poem about that because there's a problem to me that we think that men have been the problem. It's man, man, man. They go to war. They do this. They do that. But I actually think it's women who have been a good part of the problem
Okay.
because it's women who teach their sons.
Right.
And
Right.
when you teach your son, if you don't teach him the right thing, then he's going to do the wrong thing.
That's right. Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, he can decide to do the wrong thing. So I
That's
have
right.
this poem called Heirloom. I'm trying to find it right now. It's called Heirloom, and it's here. Here it is. It's about Indian women, Jewish women, white women, Black women, Christian women, Muslim women, uh, uh, Buddhists, everybody
Right.
who want to take the ideas, traditional ideas, and use those ideas to limit the growth of people. Okay? So
Okay.
it's called heirloom. Traditions of dead men remain alive. Bitter though some women may be, they too represent ideas, battles hard won, their own tales of strife, loving, hating, dying, denying. Unadmittedly ashamed and afraid to lose the care of father, brother, husband, or son. The female lineage is really as much the one whose participation into the next generation think it was wise to keep the precious traditions alive, passing like heirlooms, relics for the keeping. Women dare not, or perhaps even care not, to stand up and say, we are weary of carrying races and religions as heirlooms.
I think you'll find a lot of people that agree with you that, particularly in situations where you have sons that have been raised by their mothers, that yes, that mothers are the first teachers you often hear, and as a result, it's extremely important that mothers and fathers teach their sons the right things. But I hear what you're saying that we cannot just leave while men are have to take their share of the responsibility, but if we are open enough, then we can see the women themselves can see how if they continue those traditions or pass on those heirlooms, as I hear you saying, that then we're perpetuating the problem. right? The issues that
exactly.
arise of life, exactly.
And up to now, women tend to say, "Oh no, it's the men," but it's all of us.
It's all of us, yes, and all of us have to come together to make the change that's necessary for sure.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the second event, which was when you brought Luther Francois Trio, the Luther Francois Trio, to our class back in '74, I believe it was, and he came with Emerson Nurse and Mervyn Francois. Mervyn Francois was on bass, Emerson Nurse was on drums, and Luther played piano and flute and guitar. And I'm not sure he actually played saxophone at the time. I believe he took up saxophone a little bit later. And they played some interesting songs, some jazz, Caribbean jazz fusion, and invited at the end of that, invited any of us who was interested to come up to where they would practice and so on in Mondidon. And just kind of come and expose ourselves to music, come and learn some music and so forth. And I recall we had discussions about the music, what it meant, what is jazz, and then how jazz essentially, embodies creativity, improvisation, and all of those interesting things. Funny enough, nowadays I do these short presentations on jazz and leadership, right? And how jazz can inform leadership practice, or how jazz can inform the sort of management of strategic initiatives under uncertainty, and where the need for improvisation becomes very important, and the need for what we call distributed leadership, which is giving everybody their chance to lead. That's the equivalent of everybody taking a solo, right?
That's right.
Exactly,
Very,
right? So
very.
so that was a very important moment, because it was then that I decided I'd never played a musical instrument before, that I wanted to learn to play piano and guitar. But because I couldn't afford a piano, guitar was a lot easier to come by. I started learning to play guitar, and to this day, I have continued to play guitar, even though I wanted to study music and I couldn't. I went and did engineering. I never stopped playing. And what's interesting, I should mention that to you, the guitar that Luther Francois played for us back in 1974, I own it now. So coming back to you, after you taught us, and I mentioned that there were quite a few of us that I think that particular event, had an impact on us, because we all wanted to try to play jazz, Trevor Mata, Vern Gill, Llewellyn Gill, a few other people, that decided to massive music at the time. We were all trying to learn to play a little bit of jazz. So that was a very important time in our life. So after you left St. Lucia, what did you decide to do? You
Well,
left. You went to
I,
Martinique. Why Martinique?
well, Martinique was the closest Caribbean island, and it was a little more developed in some ways, in terms of it being a part of France.
Yes.
And I had to I became the directress of the Chamber of Commerce Language School,
Oh, okay.
and of course I had to learn French and so forth.
Yes. So
And
your French is pretty good
that's
then, I
how I
presume?
sorry.
I say your French must be pretty good after almost 40 years
Oui,
now.
je parle français couramment, oui.
And how can you speak Creole too as well?
Ma capacité, Brian.
Cavality with Creole.
Oui.
So tell me,
No,
so you work with the Chamber of Commerce. You said that you're providing language
yes. And
training.
I also worked at the University of the West Indies here in Martinique.
Oh,
And
right.
so I did that for a while. And then I, before that, I opened an art gallery.
Mm,
And I had an art gallery for about 4 years.
all right.
And so that's kind of, I was always in something that had to do with art
Ah, that's
somehow.
part. That's your soul. That's your vibe.
I think so. I think so.
Absolutely. Art is what gives us life. Art is what gives us meaning. Art is what gives us the sort of depth of purpose.
I absolutely agree, and that's probably one of the reasons that I thought that the students needed to hear some music.
In a lot of ways, even how I teach and how I approach problem solving, I delve into music and art to help inspire how I approach those things. So I brought that to my consulting. Sometimes I would actually break into a jazz scat, in the middle of a consulting workshop, and they look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm saying, I said, what am I doing? And I said, this is about essentially just allowing yourself to express how you feel or how you think about a particular issue without worrying about all the boundaries and the constraints. So I'll just break it and they look at me.
That's fantastic.
What's this guy? I said, so then we start talking
Love
about
it.
creativity and how we need to give people an opportunity to express themselves, or not. The person that should be talking should not always be the head of the department. Because if that only this, if only Miles Davis was the only person soloing, the Miles Davis quartet would be, or quintet would be, a very boring band. But when you have people like John Coltrane now grabbing the solo and then running with that, or whatnot, it was Herbie Hancock on the piano, and or Wynton Kelly on the drums, everybody getting to create, and then everybody supporting them. That's what made the music interesting, and that's what needs to make your organization interesting, by bringing all these elements together and so on.
That's something I feel a little bit concerned about and saddened about, because I don't see where that kind of musical interaction is happening now, and I fear for jazz. Fear that I mean, I used to see that Europe had departments of jazz. Japan, all universities had a department of jazz. In America, no, they didn't have.
Uh,
In Canada, I don't think they had as well. But
no.
where are the new jazz creators, the new avant-garde people? Where are they?
I guess they exist, but they're,
Where do
they're,
they
they're few and
live?
far between, and a lot of times, a lot of them have to do multiple things to make a living, because it's just
I,
so hard to
I
survive.
understand that, but
Yeah.
that's what worries me. It
No.
worries me that,
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful art form maybe doesn't have enough people
Right.
pursuing that pursuing that line. You just mentioned off the top of your head about 10 or 15 different jazz artists who were very well known and very creative.
Right.
Can you do that today? Because a lot of those jazz artists, they're already gone.
Oh, absolutely. They absolutely go. And in fact, what you keep hearing is that we keep referring to the very same pioneers, right? But not
Right. The
on the guitar
pioneers. But
world. Yes.
we need more people like yourself who are engaged and who want to see that music doesn't disappear,
No.
that
Not at all.
music is progressing.
And I think basically what it is that we need to sort of re-examine or reimagine how we educate young people, to not create these streams that say, oh no, you're in science or you're in the arts and so on, but really to allow for cross fertilization to happen, because I really believe that if some of the people who are the policymakers and so on had a very strong artistic side, we would get more interesting and more creative and more innovative solutions to problems, social problems, and so on. But it's because that we become so linear in our thinking, so narrowly focused, that we don't see the interconnectedness of all of these different disciplines, how they inform each other, how they support each other. And I think that that's a disservice, because we opt for the efficiency of teaching where we say, okay, this is a science stream, so everybody's in science, so we need a couple of science teachers, and it looks efficient. And then arts, okay, but if we had to have everybody educated with a bit of everything, then perhaps I know that this will be better, but from the standpoint of the school, looking at resources and finding teachers and so on, perhaps might feel that it's not as efficient.
The bottom line is that we have to feed the soul,
Uh huh.
and art feeds the soul.
Absolutely.
My
No.
grandson is now playing the ukulele and the
Okay.
piano.
Nice. Nice.
He's 5, so
you just got to introduce him to the music, and talking about introducing them to the music. I mean, the legacy of what happened in that class has now gone on to my own children, because my daughter, my younger
yeah,
daughter,
yeah, that's so wonderful.
she sings jazz. She's actually composed a jazz tune just recently on commission about Viola Desmond, who is like our local, who considered our local Rosa Parks in Nova Scotia, and she's actually on our $10 bill now. And Zamani was asked to write a song about Viola Desmond. So I think for us to bring this to a close, if I could get another poem from you, and then I'll do a little piece of I like to do so what. So let's see if I could do a little piece of so what, and then we could wrap it up and maybe play a little bit of Zamani's "You People" if I could find it here. So share with us.
Why don't I read something about what my process is in a poem?
Okay,
Okay,
absolutely.
this is called writing a poem. Writing a poem is natural. Some lines slip easy and fast, past blocks of hindrance, into mine, but must at once be written down or lost in the moment. Some lines require digging in the murky mire of feelings and being, and word by word emerge. There is nothing like the satisfaction of this release into the outer, the wounds and wonders of interior dealings, breathless excitement peaking in some wispy wisdom, like flowing on a stream of air that make you feel you've been somewhere, invited deep in flight, away from restriction, towards some joyful benediction. Spirit moving through stomach and breast. A fullness of this kind filters to the open mind, receptive and waiting to make material this ethereal realness.
So you're still writing? You're working on anything new that you're about to publish anytime soon?
Uh, Actually, I've been doing screenplays. I have 2 screenplays.
Okay.
One is called The Music in Me, and it's about a young man who um, has a mentor, an older woman actually, who he falls in love with,
All
and
right.
he's in Harlem, and he's trying to make it and to get out of rap. She's trying to get him involved in jazz, and he's kind of a rapper, but he's a very talented person. So anyway, it's all about that, and I'd like to sell it because I think it would involve a lot of our music, but I'll see. So
You see
anyway,
what
that's what
happens.
I've been
Okay.
doing.
All right.
Yeah,
So
for the music,
you published it already, or it's just
it's with the Writers Guild.
okay.
It's already with the Writers Guild, but with COVID, there's been so many production companies shut down and stuff.
Right,
So
right,
maybe,
right.
maybe at some future time, it'll be published. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. We're looking forward to hearing about it for sure. Well, that's fantastic. Last comment from your philosophy of life. I know that you said you had your philosophy at the back of your book there.
Yeah, that where I say that all profound human experiences eventually become poetry. But I have a CD that I published in, I think it was the year 2000, so that's quite a few years ago. But it was called nostalgia,
Okay,
and it's a word that I made up because you have nostalgia, and I put new on it,
new on it,
nostalgia.
nostalgia.
So nostalgia, a human longing for growth through past experiences into a new and progressive sense of who you are.
Oh,
Nostalgia
nostalgia.
is aptitude, attitude, and fortitude.
Fantastic. It reminds me of a principle called Sankofa. I don't know if you heard of it. Sankofa is actually a mythical bird in the Akan culture, and that mythical bird has its neck turned back with an egg in its beak while it's flying forward. So the idea that as we look to the future, we got to go back and take what is good, but forge this sort of new and innovative future. So nostalgia, attitude, and you said fortitude, and what was the other one? Aptitude, was it?
Fortitude, aptitude,
And
and
fortitude,
attitude.
exactly. So the idea of really looking forward with a sense of purpose. I see some similarities there with this sort of Sankofa principle,
And
and
that's what I hope for our young people and everybody, really.
yes, oh, absolutely, not just for young people, because every time we find ourselves at a particular juncture in life, we got to look back and as we forge the future, take lessons from the past and move forward with this sort of sense
Absolutely.
of
I just want to mention something about your daughter's name, Zamani.
yes.
Did you name her that for any particular reason?
Okay, so basically, it means time, and a name that's often given to storytellers in Swahili culture. Now, granted, it has some Persian roots, but it's also a
Okay,
name
just want to
that's
make sure.
popular in East Africa. And
Yeah,
so there was this book about Zamani goes to market, and the young Zamani was actually a boy, so it's a unisex name. But I guess my wife sort of really liked that name, and because it also meant storyteller, she felt that Zamani was going to be the person that's going to carry forth our history into the future. And interestingly enough, she likes telling stories and she likes to write music, and she's so we see it being manifested.
but the traditional African cultural meaning of Zamani
Tell me.
is infinity in the past. So when something happens in those traditional African cultures, today went into the past, and the past was infinite, whereas the Western view was it didn't happen yet, so you had infinity. But
Right.
the traditional African way was infinity in the past. So it happened and it went into the past. So
Interesting.
it's very
This,
interesting. Yeah,
this is the
I
first
love
time
it.
I'm
I
hearing
love
this.
the
I will have
name.
to read up a bit more on that for
Yeah,
sure.
Zamani. Mhm.
And as you say that, so maybe because in a sense, you hear other meanings that are well similar meanings, like a long time ago, right? So there is this
Mhm.
connection with time. Zamani is connected
And
with
with
time.
stories.
Right, and stories, right.
Stories.
A long time ago. So her middle name is Folade, which means honor arrives. So we often say that honor arrives from a long time ago. So the whole idea that she carries with her all of that tradition and that history in the past, right, and brings it into the future. So honor arrives from a long time ago, which is there. So Zamani Folade, we should be saying Folade Zamani to for it to be that sort of literal translation like that. I said I was going to do So What, but since I try to dabble with a little bit of singing, I will try a little bit of that, you know? So I like to do this song, and it basically represents wishful thinking right now. Summertime, summertime. The fish are jumping, jumping. The cotton is high. One of these mornings, you're gonna wake up singing. So hush, pretty baby, and don't you cry. That's enough, right?
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
I want to thank you for taking this time to. We said 45 minutes, but hey, the conversation was great. Where did the time go? And I want to thank you for because for having had that impact, for the foresight to bring music into our classroom when we didn't get it very often, or we hardly got it at all at school, and how that sort of helped a number of us to get into music. And in my case, unlike some of my friends who said that they don't get time to play anymore because they've gotten so much into their careers, I have not allowed music to sit idly by and not engage with it. It is essential to who I am. And I always encourage not just our kids, of course, but even my students, that they need to develop an artistic side, because while they're studying business, if they could bring art and business together, that would make the businesses even much more successful.
Well, that was in you. That was a passion. And if I helped you discover it, I am honored.
Thank you, Teacher Outram. We used to call it Miss Outram. Say hi to your husband, your family, and
We
I'm
will.
hoping that when this pandemic subsides to or becomes what is that, endemic or not pandemic, if that's the right term, then I know you said you want to visit Nova Scotia, so we will be waiting for you.
I certainly do. I'm planning to do that. So look out for me. Okay.